Hi, how you doing and welcome back to another video on the channel. What we have for you today is our wildcard video going into Game Week 10, and as you can tell by the title, it's 97% rated. We've got Salah and Haaland in it, but we're really focusing on the players we're trying to fit around them to give the team a bit of balance. Whether you're wildcarding or not, hopefully it'll give you some good ideas for transfers moving forward for your own team. If you are new to the channel, please do subscribe, like the video. It is really appreciated, and we're a small channel trying to grow. And I do also just want to say we're recording this before Sunday's games have kicked off, but if there's any injuries or suspensions that would affect the players in this team, I'll put some more options down in the comments. Let's get into the team. So it seems to me that we're regularly having Raya in these teams. I think if he was fit, I'd also maybe have Alisson in that conversation, given how good Liverpool's defence is. But because he's out for the foreseeable future, you could opt for Kelleher if you wanted a cheap way into the Liverpool defence. But it'll ultimately mean a keeper transfer somewhere down the line, which I'm not a massive fan of. So given that only one of the 12 teams who've played so far this weekend have kept a clean sheet, it'd probably make more sense that you just went for a cheap keeper who sees a lot of action and gets a lot of save points. Hermansen from Leicester City is the second most saves in the league, which has resulted in him only getting 1 point twice in 9 games so far. So you might think, if you're putting in Hermansen, why not put in Sells for 4.6 million? And you could do that. But for Forest fixtures, I think it surely means at some point their luck are going to run out. Forest fixtures as a whole, they don't look great, and they are really a mid-table team who are overperforming at the moment. So I do think Hermansen is a little bit cheaper, and Leicester's fixtures are okay for a team that's just been promoted. And he's also made half the amount of saves as Hermansen as well. So I think for me, Hermansen is the best cheap keeper who just makes a lot of saves. He's probably going to get 2 or 3 points most game weeks, and if he keeps a clean sheet one day for Leicester City, he'll probably be in the bonus as well. So we're sticking Rico Lewis in here as pretty much our premium defender, as you will. I do think he's more nailed than we think. If Walker comes back, he'll probably move into midfield, and they all have a chance of being rotated. Ake could come in for Gvardiol, for example, in which case you might as well save your money and invest it in premium midfielders and attackers. Everton still have a few good weeks of fixtures. I think if you want an Everton defender, I'd probably get them in now. Then Mykolenko is good for your bench. 4.3 million, all players at this price will have poor fixtures at some point, but no one is keeping clean sheets, remember, so why does it matter anyway? If you could get in a 6 million defender and they'd still lose the clean sheet. So at the moment, I think it really is worth going a bit lighter in defence. On the bench, Okoli has played 90 minutes in the last 7 Leicester City games at 4 million. He seems to make the most sense at that price. It does mean double Leicester defence, but I think you'll rarely play both. If you ever need to have your third bench player coming off your bench, at least he'll be someone who's on the pitch. So I think that third bench player is really important, just to have the cheapest player possible, because you're never ever going to really use them. But if you did, refreshing your bench with players like this who are going to play 90 minutes at least gives you 1 or 2 points, which could make all the difference at this stage of the season. And also, how many times do players in your starting 11 get 1 or 2 points anyway? So I think Fulham's fixtures for the foreseeable are passable all the way to game week 22. And of course there's games against Arsenal and Liverpool in there, but I think find me a player who doesn't have a couple of games like that in that time frame. I think even better fixtures for good teams can have poor returns. Finally, Ait-Nouri can cover for some of these fixtures in that time frame. He has a massive attacking threat, basically playing as a midfielder with 3 goals and 2 assists so far this season. That return is incredible, especially when you think Wolves haven't been performing as a team. I think he'll be talked about a lot in the coming weeks as a really good budget defender option in general, and I think on a wild card he's probably as close to a must-have as you can get. So into the midfield, and Mbeumo still has some great games to come, but we always say that good form makes hard fixtures easier, and he's definitely in good form right now. He's been obvious for a while with 8 goals in 9 games, and I don't really see why he'll slow down in the near future. Even with Vissa coming back, it's not like it's going to take Mbeumo's minutes. Mbeumo was playing really well when Vissa was starting at the start of the season, so I don't really see an impact there either. With a cheap defence, it's no surprise to see some big hitters in midfield. It's a must-have. I've managed to squeeze in Salah. Of course, you could downgrade him and upgrade Mbuemo for a Saka-Foden combination, say, when the time is right. But I think even with a lot of people selling Salah recently, I still think he's a fantastic option. People say Liverpool's fixtures are tough, but now Arsenal are going to be out of the way after this weekend. Villa and Man City are at home for them. I actually don't think they're that bad. He's even played 90 minutes in 6 of the 8 games so far, so we know he's not a rotation risk. I think the fewest amount of minutes Salah has played this season is 72 in one game, and then in the other game he's played 80-something, and then he's played 90 in the rest, and he's going to be on penalties. Palmer is the other premium. He's someone everyone will want in a couple of weeks, and he can still score in the meantime. From game week 14 to 22, Chelsea arguably have the best fixtures in the entire league. So I had the option of going for Bowen and a 4.5 million to round out the midfield, but I decided to go with Kulusevski and Semenyo. I think going this way gives you a decent first bench option. I still like Bowen. I think people will say that West Ham aren't in form, but neither are Wolves, and people are loving them for their fixtures. Matthias Cunha, Aït-Nouri, Strand Larsen, they're all really good options. And I think West Ham's fixtures are also nice. Forest, Everton, Newcastle, Leicester, Wolves, Bournemouth, Brighton and Southampton up to game week 19. But going with these two also means that they rotate quite well with each other. For example, when Kulusevski plays Man City in game week 12, Semenyo plays Brighton, and I think that rotation balance and just having that, if someone does get injured or suspended, you actually don't need to force a transfer here because you've got a bit of cover on the bench, but not too much that you think, oh, this player should be starting every week because they're costing me a lot of transfer budget. So on to the strikers, and dropping one of Kulusevski or Semenyo down in price would mean upgrading Welbeck or Larsen to Chris Wood or Matthias Cunha if you preferred, but Welbeck is so nailed on for starts at the moment. I know Liverpool and Man City are 2 tough games coming up immediately, but if you can survive them, he's got Bournemouth, Southampton, Fulham, Leicester, Palace, West Ham and Brentford between 11 and 19, and I know from hearing things, team news around Brighton, that they really did rush him back for this game week that's just gone, and it just shows how important he is. Brighton have a lot of attacking options, but we don't know how long João Pedro's out for. There's no timetable for his return. So in terms of being an attacker for how Brighton want to play, Welbeck is their best option right now, so I don't see a world where he gets rotated anytime soon. I do prefer Cunha over Larsen, but I think you've got to compromise somewhere, and Larsen is generally getting more minutes than Matthias Cunha, or they're at least getting the same, and Larsen is playing a little bit further forward. Cunha has penalties, which is always a bonus, and has one more goal, I think, this season than Strand Larsen, but I think they're like for like, so it's really what you value more, Strand Larsen plus $1 million or Matthias Cunha, and I think it depends on where you invest that $1 million. I think if you didn't have Haaland or Salah, you could easily get Matthias Cunha in and still invest that elsewhere. If you want both of those 2 players, then you do have to make that compromise somewhere. So Haaland is another big one. You could totally revamp your team by swapping him to literally any other striker, but you risk losing out massively if it goes wrong due to the high ownership. He's had his blanks, and I think it could be the wrong time to not have him now. It doesn't really matter who Man City are playing. Haaland is always that threat, and just that high ownership does mean that it could go wrong pretty quickly. At this stage of the season, when the ranks are so close together, not having a player who can really hit it big could massively impact your rank, and sometimes you might get it correct. You might, like the last game week, Salah got a goal and assist and Haaland blanked. That's fantastic, and if you did that, well done. But personally, I wouldn't want to be sweating every game week thinking I could go down 1 million places just by not owning Haaland. So as we said at the start of the video, this team rating is 97%, which is one of the highest we've had so far the whole time we've been doing these videos. Now, obviously the data is nice to back up your ideas, but it's not the be-all and end-all. Remember, as long as you're in the mid-90s, I think you're absolutely fine. Now, a lot of variables can happen in football that the data can't account for, red cards, own goals, it can't predict things like that. But knowing that it's, supporting what we're hoping to achieve with our team here is a nice feeling nonetheless. So the value is 100.6 million, and as we always say, as long as we're around the 100 million mark, I think that's absolutely fine, because a lot of these players, you might have owned Palmer for a while, or you might have owned Haaland for a while, in which case you don't need to get them in now. And let's say you've got Haaland in at 15 million. Well, this team has him included at 15.4 million. No, this team is like, we're buying all these players from scratch. So you'll save yourself 0.4 million there, in which case this team value for you is 100.2 million. And that could go for a couple of players, maybe a Rico Lewis or a Danny Welbeck or someone that you've had for a while, like a Brian Mbeumo. So hopefully a lot of people can still afford this team. It's not too out of reach. So for me, the strengths are, you've got the biggest of hitters. Palmer, Salah, Haaland. I think personally they are the three players who can get the biggest point haul every single game week. It's not like you've got a player who maybe gets a goal and that's it. All of these players on any given game week could go for double digits, 15 plus points, say. So I think having those big hit players in is worth it because we've got that balance. And it also makes it easy to make transfers. A downside of having quite a well-balanced, squad throughout with less premiums is if you did want to make a transfer, it's going to cost you at least two, right? To sort of downgrade one player and upgrade another to someone more expensive. Having Salah and Haaland and even Palmer, they're the most expensive players in the game. So for me, I think you could literally transfer them out and go to anybody else in one transfer if you wanted to make a short-term move. So that is a strength of this team. The weaknesses is there an over-reliance on big hitters? So what I mean is have I put too many eggs in a small basket here? So if all three of those players do blank, Palmer, Salah and Haaland, is there enough in the rest of the team to back that up? So you could say yes, it might not, like we said earlier in the video, it might not matter which defenders you get in. It could be the case that they all don't keep clean sheets, in which case you're in the same boat as everybody else. But it is something to bear in mind, and you do maybe need to monitor the fixtures of those players filling in around those three premiums a bit more closely to make sure you attack those players who might be getting you those extra points should the worst happen and those three blank. And there is reasonable bench cover. Some people might say that it's not the deepest bench, but I think having one playing defender, for me personally, I've not really needed to go too deep in my bench this season. I don't think I've ever had a game week so far this season where I've needed two players to come off my bench and fill in some issues. And for me, going into the Christmas section of fixtures, you maybe do need those players on your bench available, but I think this bench is completely fine. If you've got three bench players who all start and get pretty much 90 minutes week in, week out for their teams, I think that's good enough. And Semenyo does have that potential to come in and start for your team if you did want to rest someone like Kulusevski, maybe a Strand Larsen, if you didn't like the fixtures. So let me know what you think. I think it's a pretty good team, but I'm always happy to hear different people's opinions and players that you think I've maybe missed or players that I've put in that you don't think anymore. And likewise, if you've got any transfer questions of your own team, put them in the comments. I'll get back to you. If you value my opinion and think it's worth something, I'm more than happy to help. So thank you very much for listening. Please do like and subscribe. Hopefully you're having a good game week and good luck in Sunday's games as well. Hope your players return for you, and I will see you in the next one.